this a new day. Make a move, doing things a new way. A new way. 'Cause this is our world, and this is our time. These are our plans, we're gonna let them shine. This is our place in the human race, and we won't stop dreaming. No, we won't stop dreaming. Look ahead, we can see forever. You and me doing it together. Light it up, we can be a million stars. Look at us, don't you see we've come so far? Yeah, we've come so far. 'Cause this is our world, and this is our time, and these are our plans, we're gonna let them shine. This is our place in the human race, and we won't stop dreaming. No, we won't stop dreaming.
Hey, this is Craig. Welcome to Every Woman. Hi, Andrea. How are you today?
I'm doing the best I can.
I understand. Thank you for joining us. We're anxious to hear your story. The way I usually do this is I have some questions to ask you, and then at the end I'll let you tell your story freestyle, as it were.
Okay.
Okay, sound good?
Yep.
When were you born?
1971.
1971. Where were you born?
Yuba City, California.
Did you grow up there?
I grew up in the area. The area where we live, Yuba City, Marysville, Olivers, Linda, it's all just a hop, skip, and a jump away from each other. I can be in Yuba City in about 5 miles.
Okay, I get that. I grew up in Riverside, California, and it's like
That's a very big area compared to here.
right. But what I'm saying is, it's like Riverside, Corona, Redlands, Grand Terrace. It's all right there together. It's just a shot down the freeway from one to the other. So I can relate. California is just kind of everything's on top of each other. It's a unique setting.
Kind of. I actually live and grew up mainly out in what you would call a rural area of Yuba County. Sutter County is where Yuba City is. But like I said, a bridge divides them. As you're going over the bridge, you go from Yuba County to Sutter County.
Like out of city proper, out into the county.
Yeah.
Okay. And how close is that to Redding?
To Redding, it's a couple of hours south. I am between Sacramento and Chico. I'm just a little bit east of the smallest mountain range in the world called the Sutter Buttes.
Okay. All right. My sister married a guy whose family had property in Redding, and when his aunt died, he inherited it, and they lived there for a while.
I'm about 30 minutes north of Sacramento.
Okay. And you mentioned it was kind of rural. Is it farmland, or is it just desert? Because I know California's got a lot of that.
No, we're not desert. We're farmland. I live a few miles away from Beale Air Force Base. So we're at the edge of the foothills, but kind of still in the valley. If I look out my front door to the left, I can see the mountain range, the Sierra Nevada mountain range.
That was one of the really cool things about growing up in Riverside. Was I'm at the foot of the mountains there in Big Bear, and that I was about 40. Riverside seems to be about 45 minutes from everything. It's like 45 minutes to the beach, 45 minutes to Glamis, 45 minutes to the mountains. It just kind of that's a magic number in Riverside. But I could walk out my front door and turn to my left and look and just see snow-covered mountains, and it's like June.
Yeah, when it snows a lot up in the Sierra Nevadas, you can look to the left and see it from here.
Yeah, cool. That's
Oh.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah. We're just below the Oroville Dam. I'm not sure if you're from California, if you've ever heard of the Oroville Dam. It's the largest dam in California. I'm about 30 minutes south of it, but 30 minutes north of Sacramento. So I'm right smack dab in the middle.
Okay, sweet. And it's more about you personally. Were you a good student?
When I was younger, I was, and in my teenage years, I got rebellious and dropped out and didn't graduate.
I was kind of the opposite. I was not a good student in the early years, and in high school, I kind of figured it out. I better get my stuff together. I'm not going to graduate. I did, barely, barely. I know a lot of parents have some rules, and you said you were a little rebellious. Did you date as a teenager, or when did you start dating?
I was free to do pretty much whatever I wanted as a teenager.
As you grew up, did you choose career or homemaker?
Homemaker, caretaker.
Okay. Do you have children?
I do.
Many? Few? One?
I had 4 children. I have 4 children, one of which passed when she was 8, and 3 still living.
Yeah. I lost my sister when she was in her 30s, but she had cancer at 5. And we thought we were going to lose. Well, I didn't think. I wasn't born. But my parents were like, they thought they were going to lose her. I can't imagine losing a child at such a tender age.
Yeah, she was 8 when she died. She a doctor made a mistake when she was 2 weeks old and didn't treat her properly. And as a result, she had severe brain damage. She never walked or talked. She required a GI feeding tube later in her life, oxygen, pulse oximeters, those kinds of things. She died at 8 as a result of complications from the brain damage.
Probably, that's rough. Can you tell me a little about your family? Do you have an large extended family, or?
No, I was an only child.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any regrets in life?
A few. Taking my daughter to the doctors, I did, and leaving my house on June 5th, 2022.
Okay, we'll get to that later, I think. Um, what would you say is your greatest joy in life?
Now,
In general.
well, it was my husband. It was my husband. And the fact that I got through 3 children going through high school, all graduating high school, getting their diplomas, which I did not, that I was not proud of. And none of my children ever got in any trouble, never brought home by the police. None of them ever had children until they were 20. So, yeah, that was probably my biggest accomplishments and best joys is my having my children have the things that I didn't as a child.
Do you have any hobbies? Do you craft? Do you like sports, or?
Not too many hobbies anymore, and I won't go into detail what I do on a daily basis, and you'll find out why later.
Did you ever do any military service, or your spouse? Okay.
No, my brother-in-law did for 28 years. He was in
Awesome.
the Navy.
Thank you for your service. Um, have you ever been a victim of sexual assault?
Kind of in my childhood.
Sorry for that. That's rough. What about domestic violence? I'm gonna say probably not, since you so.
In my childhood, I had not such a good childhood. I was an only child to a father who was both an alcoholic, drug addict, and he had struggled with some mental illnesses, and he was very emotionally and physically abusive to both me and to my mother. And back then, they didn't, law enforcement and places didn't really reach out to help you too much.
Especially in the rural areas, I'm hearing.
Yeah. So,
And what would you say is your greatest struggle?
trying to live on my own. I went from my family, which wasn't that good of a life, at 16 to marrying my husband and having a totally different life for 34 years. And Now it's not the same.
Were you 16 when you got married?
Yes, I was 16 when we got married.
And how old was your husband?
20.
Okay, that's not that crazy a gap.
No, not considering I knew him for years before we ever started to date. He was raised very polite and with a lot of manners. He actually asked my mother if he could date me before he asked me, and my mother's response was, I think you should ask her.
So my parents were married similarly. My dad was 19 and my mother was 16 when they got married.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was in the 60s. It was looked at a little different.
Yeah. Well, me and my husband jumped through a lot of hoops to be able to get married, including going and having a judge agree to emancipate me so I could, and my parents and everybody signing everything so I could be legally married.
Your parents wouldn't sign off to it?
Well, my parents signed off so I could do everything I needed to do. We could have drove across the state line into Nevada. In Nevada, I was the age of consent and could be married. But we chose to have a wedding here because he had a bigger family and they wanted us to have a proper marriage and wedding and all that. So we went through all of the legal stuff to be able to do it here in the state of California. As a fun little fact, I got married in the park right down the street from where I now live.
So you drive by it every day?
Every day.
It's a punch in the gut, isn't it?
Some days.
I bet. What would you say is your most rewarding, most fulfilling success in life?
Would be giving my children what I never had and getting them to the points where they're at today. Which was good until June 5th, 2022.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have, so tell me your story, if you would.
Well, I married my husband in 1988. We had our first child in 1989. She became, I knew there was something wrong with her because I had seen my father have a seizure when I was at home. And when I noticed she was having seizures, we took her to the hospital, took her to the wrong hospital. One of my regrets, not taking her to a better hospital. They kept her for 3 days, did tests, but they didn't know how to read the tests. And as a result, my daughter was severely brain damaged, never walked, never talked. For 8 years, me and my husband cared for her on our own in our own home without any outside help. So we slowly watched our daughter die for 8 years. She was in our home, in our arms when she did pass. We tried to keep it together the best we could because we had 3 other children, one of which was only 6 months old at the time. We raised our children to try to have good morals and values. Like I said before, all 3 girls graduated high school. 2 of them graduated before they were 18. None of my children were ever brought home by the police. They were pretty good kids. I only have two daughters who have children of their own. Neither one of them had a child until they were in their 20s. Life was going good until we left our home on June 5th, 2022. Me and my husband, as our children moved out, we always rented. And as our children moved out, we always, downsized the house a little bit more. There was no need for such a big house. 2015, we were able to buy a small house on the same road we were married on. All of the children had moved out. And were living on their own. My youngest child had her and her ex-fiance bought a house together. They were having problems and he had decided to step away for a while. And he would come and go. He still had a room there. He still lived there. He still stayed there, but he didn't stay a lot. So my daughter being the kind-hearted, good person she was, because she took a lot after her dad about trying to help people, had taken in a girl from a job that she had met, that her family had kind of thrown her away. And the girl was just kind of an extended house guest. She was never given keys. She never paid any bills. And it was the understanding because the fiance that my daughter was having, you know, they were trying to work their issues out with, he would go between Sacramento and Marysville, which is, like I said, about 35 minutes apart. Nobody wanted my daughter in a 3-bedroom home alone in Marysville by herself, so she had invited this girl to stay there with her, and the girl stayed off and on. My daughter took care of her, and you have to back up. My daughter is the youngest that went to college and has several degrees, and she had her dream job until COVID and the pandemic hit. She worked with children. Once COVID and the pandemic hit, my daughter just gathered up jobs. At one point, she was working 3 jobs. And he ended up getting this girl a job because she was trying to help this girl get on her feet. It was supposed to be a temporary situation where my daughter was helping her, and she was trying to figure out what was going to happen between her and the fiance, whether they were going to get back together, keep the house, sell the house, you know, that kind of thing. The girl that my daughter took in, my daughter was 25 and the girl was 21, I do believe, 22. And her family pretty much threw her to the wolves, and my daughter felt bad for her. My daughter got her a job. I take that back. She was only 20 because she couldn't be on the floor. My daughter got her a job at her 3rd job. My daughter was working at a local casino. I will not mention the name of it. My daughter was working at a local casino, and she got the girl a job there. Everything's going fine. My daughter's working there. The girl finally got a job, and my daughter's having her save money so you know she can get out on her own, get her own place. They hire a lot of people at this casino. They hired somebody that my daughter knew for less than 30 days who wanted to bother my daughter and want to hit her up on this. And I don't do all this technical, this Snapchat. I don't do a lot of these things that the youngsters do. My daughter wanted pretty much nothing to do with him at this point. And he somehow got passed on or introduced to my daughter's friend. My daughter's friend, however, had a boyfriend, from what we all understood, in the Bay Area. And this kid, from what I understand now, had a girlfriend from 2021. Somehow, I don't know if they were dating, if what I would just call them shagging. I'm not sure. And she started bringing him to my daughter's house. My daughter didn't like the situation and told her that she wasn't comfortable with him being there, and had told her not to bring him there anymore because there had been some incidences where, since my daughter was working multiple jobs, sometimes she would just come home and just go right to sleep. She would wake up and her car would be gone. The girl didn't have a driver's license. So the girl and the boy were taking my daughter's car. One incident that happened, my daughter was so upset about what was happening, and she had told her not to bring him there anymore. And if she was going to continue, she was going to need to leave. What really kind of brought this all into a big proportion that me and my husband didn't know exactly what was going on, and neither did my other 2 daughters, was when my daughter woke up and they had went through her clothing that she was sleeping in and taken her keys. So there was a big to-do, and they agreed, her and the boy agreed, that they were going to take their things and not come back. Mind you, none of us knew how many things the boy had there, because this all happened within like a 2-week period. My daughter only knew the kid maybe 30 days. She stopped answering any phone messages, text messages, anything from him approximately 2 weeks before June 5th. So on June 5th, my daughter was fed up. They were all going to go to work at their normal job. My daughter wasn't giving them rides. They weren't supposed to be there anymore. Me and my husband and my other 2 daughters decided we were going to go to my daughter's house and we were going to put the girls' things out, which we did. And we changed the only way that the girl had into the house, which was a passcode on the garage. While we were there, my oldest daughter had noticed that a window in a front bedroom had been left open. So my husband decided to close that window, lock that window, and check the rest of the windows and the doors in the house before we left. My husband, being the nice, caring person he was, instead of putting this girl's stuff out in the middle of the street for the bums and anybody to take, he decided to put it in the bushes at the side of the house because he wanted, all she had was some clothes and a few things of paperwork. He wanted her to be able to have her things, though, but he was just not having the situation where people were going to go into my daughter's pockets while she was sleeping and take her car. It was, yes, this is the boy from the casino. His name is Tyler Berry. So I would refer to him as Tyler. The girl's name was Haley Browning. I will refer to her as Haley. They knew and told people at their mutual job with my daughter at the casino 2 days before that they knew that she didn't want them to ever come there again and that they needed to collect their things, whatever they thought they had, and leave. They agreed they were going to do this. They didn't. So me and my husband and my other 2 daughters put their things, the girls' things, out. We didn't know he had much of anything there. We were not under the understanding he thinks he lived there. But I have mail 30 days prior to that with his sister's address on. So after we put the things out, it was a long shift. It was a concert night at the casino. So it was a long shift for everybody. He, in the middle of the night, around 11 p.m. or so, decided he was going to flip out. He didn't know that her things were out and that he didn't have any place to go back to but his sister's. For some reason, he has anger management issues. He flipped out and was seen punching the walls as he quit his job that night. Mind you, he'd only had the job maybe 30 days. He was seen punching walls and screaming things about, "I'm going to F her up," referring to my daughter. They got back to my daughter. She was scared. She let me know what was going on. I regret leaving my house that night because me and my husband went to her house to check to make sure that it was still secure and okay. My husband checked that window to make sure it was. We drove down the road, turned around, and came back and sat there for probably less than 3 minutes. The kid pulled up, as my daughter feared he would, that he was going to go in her house. He couldn't get in through the garage because the passcode was changed. So he went to a window. And as he's trying to get in the window, me and my husband are across the street. It's about 11:30 at night now. We're across the street. My husband turns on his headlights. My husband, let me paint the picture for you. My husband is driving an 03 F-250 that's lifted in the air. It's in golden color. He has flags flying. He was a very big patriot. He had a 3% flag flying and a come and take it flag flying. We had a small business where we sold flags, blankets, hats, things like that. And my husband flipped on the lights, pointed the truck right at him, and gunned it, trying to scare the kid. Most normal human beings would see this huge truck coming towards them and move. He didn't move. My husband's truck came to stop halfway in the yard. My husband is 56 years old. He's disabled. He has degenerative disc disease in his back and his neck and in his knees. My husband's also dressed and ready for bed pretty much. He has on 1 pair of shorts, a pair of socks, and some slides. No shirt. The kid is 27, maybe 26 at the time. I think he was 26. What we didn't know is the kid who had been dishonorably discharged from the military and that he was military trained in hand-to-hand combat. There's a video of everything that happened. My husband's dash cam caught everything that happened. My husband makes his way to the kid as he's shouting at the kid to get away from the window. The kid's not listening. My husband maneuvers between the kid and the window in the house, and he's telling him to leave. The kid's saying, "I have things in there." My husband's saying, "No, you don't. I put Haley's stuff out. It's over there," and he's trying to gesture to where it's at. The kid's still refusing to agree that he's saying, I live here. My husband's saying, no, you don't. I know you don't. This is my daughter's house. What me and my husband, neither one seen, was the fact that the kid had a lanyard that was around his neck. As my husband was getting out of the truck and I was opening my door to get out and stand on my running board, the kid had taken the lanyard and whatever was on the lanyard off from around his neck, put it in his hand, and wrapped his hand and made a fist with his right hand. So as my husband's facing him and has told him about 3 times now to get away from my daughter's house, that he's not going inside, I still believe and feel that there is some kind of brush with Tyler's left hand to my husband on his stomach, or their hands brushed. My husband reacted. My husband shoved him. My husband took a step forward because my husband was standing in a partial bush. So he was like stepping away from the house. You don't want to have your back against an object like that, right? My husband stepped forward. The kid ran towards my husband, swung with his right hand, which I believe the reason he used his left hand to try to get my husband's attention was to make my husband react. He ran forward. He swung. My husband was 6'1", 320 pounds. Kid was maybe 5'10", 5'11", less than 200 pounds. With one swing, he took my husband down like a sack of potatoes. I believe that was one of the fatal blows to my husband. My husband got back up. I tried to use pepper spray, but it had the kind of thumb guard on it that I couldn't get over and down fast enough. He hit my husband again. My husband went down again. My husband stood back up. The kid got around behind my husband. In the video, it shows that something flies between me and them. It's the weapon that he was using. He has my husband in a headlock, and he's still continuing to try to hit him on the side of the head. He picks my husband up off the ground, slams him almost up against the house. So my husband didn't step forward very far before the kid hit him. He pins my husband down, puts his knee in my husband's chest, and continues to repeatedly punch my husband while screaming, "You mother effer, you mother effer." I'm screaming, "Get off my husband." He has a heart condition because my husband had had a prior heart attack 10 years before that and had to have a stent put in. When I got to where they were at to try to pull him off, I had got the thumb guard on my mace over by then. I screamed at my husband. I screamed, "Brad, cover, spray." I pulled the kid up as much as I could, sprayed him inside of his face, and he says to my husband, because my husband is on his back with his arms in the air, and I can hear him pleading for his life, saying, "Please get off of me. I'm done." The guy says, "If she gets off of me, I'll get off of you." So I very angrily pulled him off of my husband, and he backed across the yard. I put myself in between him and my husband, glanced over my shoulder to see my husband crawling on all fours. The kid advanced forward. I sprayed him again. He was saying all kinds of stupid things to me about how he had a seizure disorder and that I could kill him by spraying him. My husband gets up and is going towards our truck. The kid pulls his phone out and calls 911. Mind you, he told the police that night that when the police arrived, that he lived there. When he calls 911, he's on the phone. If someone can ever get the 911 tape that I've never been able to hear because the police won't release it to me, you will hear me in the background. You will hear them asking him where he's at, and he's saying he doesn't know. And I say, "You're at 728 Harris Street, you dumb F." My husband calls my name and says, "Get in the truck." So I get in the truck. We start to back up. He's on the phone. He starts to go down the side of the house, and my husband says he's going to go in the house anyway and wait for Valarie or do something to the dogs. I have to stop him. I tell my husband, "Nothing in there's worth your life at this point. We won't let Valarie go home." We're leaving. We made it approximately 2 blocks when my husband reached forward and says to me, "I think he effed me up." I look at my husband and say, what do you mean? My husband turns his head slightly towards me, tries to say something, gargles blood. His foot hits the gas, his head goes back. We hit two parked cars and went through the side of an apartment building where our truck stopped. I took my seatbelt off as soon as my husband said, I think he effed me up, and tried to move over towards my husband. When the truck hit the two parked cars and went through the side of an apartment where we came to rest on top of somebody's bed with a woman standing in a closet screaming, I was not in a seatbelt. My husband was in a seatbelt. I had leaned over my husband onto his lap because I could see we were going to wreck, and held onto his door to brace for impact. When I got out, when I set up, I knew my husband was already gone. I checked, he was gone. I couldn't find a phone. I was screaming for somebody to help me. Someone from the apartments came and tried to help my husband, but my husband was gone. There was a big scene that night. The Marysville Police Department, I will name them, the Marysville Police Department and Officer Rosenfeld lost control of the scene. Multiple people were allowed to take pictures of my husband's dead body laying on the ground and post them all over Facebook, including the perpetrator's sister. The perpetrator was arrested that night. My middle daughter went back to the house when they pronounced my husband dead because they worked on my husband for over 20 minutes trying to revive him. They never got nothing. When she went to my youngest daughter's house, the kid was there. When she told him, you killed my dad, he picked up a knife off the counter and told her to get out or she was next. He was charged with that plus several charges for beating my husband that night. For 3 months, we went to court. He kept getting postponed this and postponed that and wanting his bail reduced so he could get out. The DA kept telling me that they were going forth with all, I do believe, 5 charges they had against him, and that they were going to amend it to voluntary manslaughter. My husband, his autopsy shows that his injuries were 2 brain hemorrhages, a fractured neck, 5 broken ribs, and a ruptured esophagus. After 3 months of going back and forth to court, and mind you, my husband's death certificate says homicide, and it lists blunt force trauma to the head and neck. After going back and forth to court and the kid's family continuously saying my husband died in the crash, which was ruled out. My husband's death certificate says he died as a result of the fight that happened in his daughter's front yard at 728 Harris Street. After 3 months, the kid secured a lawyer. And somehow they dismissed all charges, never filed the voluntary manslaughter charge, even though 2 police departments, the Yuba County Sheriff's Department and the Marysville Police Department, recommended that they add that to the charges they had. No judge ever heard a word of what happened to my husband. All they heard was about him picking up a knife off the counter and telling my daughter to get out of her sister's house. They let him plead guilty to brandishing a weapon. He got 74 days time served. In the meantime, for the whole 3 months, his family continued to threaten me and my daughters. They still threaten us today. As of recent, a few weeks ago, he made a comment on Facebook saying that somebody in my family had threatened his children, and nobody in my family has threatened his children. My family is not like that. I have stayed quiet for 853 days. That man murdered my husband. He continues to say that my husband attacked him. They got in a fight. My husband drove away, crashed his truck, and died in the crash. My husband did not die in the crash. Nobody is threatening his family. But I have Facebook messages where he's saying that if somebody touches his children, it will be all bad for all of us. My house has been put on watch multiple times. I sleep with 2 loaded guns. I don't go outside a lot. I have one daughter who refuses to pretty much leave and go outside unless she's accompanied by her husband, one daughter who ran away, the one that the knife was pulled on, because she was a property manager at the time, and his sister lived in a property that my daughter managed, so they constantly gave her problems. Every time she went to the property, they constantly gave her problems. He walked in when he was out on bail for murdering my husband and brandishing a weapon at her, is what they found him guilty of, or what he pled guilty of, and smiled at her, but he knew he wasn't supposed to have any contact with her. His mother tried to attack me on the courtroom steps. His sisters tried to pull me out of a moving car. But I will be quiet no more. I have documentation that says he killed my husband. The DA refuses to pursue charges because they let him say it was self-defense. In self-defense and stand your ground in California, you need to be on your own property, for one. For two, you cannot load your hand, use brass knuckles, or a punch. He had something on the lanyard. The pictures of my husband's face prove it. I was not in a seatbelt. We hit two parked cars, totaled them, went through the side of an apartment building. I walked away. My husband did not die in the wreck. Suing him for wrongful death. I don't have much. It would cost a lot that I don't have to sue him, and he has nothing. So where would I get another piece of paper that tells me what I already know? That he murdered my husband? We didn't know he was military trained. We also didn't know that in lieu of a court martial, he took a dishonorable discharge for drugs, having problems listening to his commanders, and no contact orders. I have paperwork that shows that this man had to do anger management in the military, and he willingly asked and signed for a dishonorable discharge so he wouldn't be prosecuted for any of the charges. And the day that they let him out of jail, Yuba County Sheriff's Department did not want to let him out of jail. His lawyer stood in a court and told a judge that he had never been in trouble before, after they did not tell a judge what led up to him pulling a knife on my daughter. Nothing about my husband was ever brought up in that courtroom. Nothing. They rearrested the kid the same day. They didn't let him out of jail immediately. They rearrested him on an out-of-county warrant. He had a lawyer. His name is Manny Sadu. He told a judge his client had never been in trouble. He did not tell his judge that his client had been dishonorably discharged from the military because he had anger management issues, drug issues, and already had no contact orders, or that he had an out-of-county warrant that was active while he was in the Yuba County jail. He was rearrested. A bail was posted. He left town. To my knowledge, he never did his work program, pay his fine, or his probation for what he was convicted of for my daughter. Now he's living in Lake County. He's free to do what he pleases, have more children, have a happy life. I have tried to kind of silently get justice for my husband and ask the DA to listen. The DA, without our permission, released the dash cam video of my husband being beaten and our accident on Facebook. It caused a lot of problems around town. Some people agree with what happened. Some people don't agree with what happened. The kid knew he couldn't stay here, so he went to Lake County. If he's done this before in the military, and he did this to my husband, he'll do this again. He was trying to take over my daughter's life. After 2 days after he murdered my husband and told the police he lived in the house, him and the girl Haley sent the homeowner a text message asking if they could rent the house. If you live there, why do you need to rent it? I have all of this. I've given it to the police. The police asked the district attorney, Clint Curry of Yuba County, to pursue charges. He refuses. He says it was self-defense. But he will not use the words, my husband's death was justifiable. It took him over a year to take a meeting with me and my daughters to ask him why he wouldn't take the video down. Even victim witness asked him to take the video down. He was asked on social media, in person, his office. Finally, he took a meeting with us. He told me at first he wouldn't take the video down. He also told me He admitted that he prosecutes to the fullest extent of the law less than half of 1% of all cases that come across his desk. So, in other words, the district attorney of Yuba County is useless. He did take the video and his statement down. And even in his statement, it says that Bradley succumbed to the injury sustained during the fight. But this kid continues to go around and tell the public that my husband attacked him and he defended himself, and that my husband drove away, crashed his truck, and died. I want the world and anybody who will listen to know Tyler Berry of Lake County murdered Bradley Young June 5th, 2022. He used his military training and he murdered my husband. What is on that video, if a police officer did it, would be charged. Tyler Berry was not charged. And it's not fair. My life is horrible. I'm by myself. One daughter doesn't leave her house. One daughter tried to run away and ended up right back here in the same town. My youngest daughter, that this was her house, has ended up in a mental institution. She can't keep a job. She can't stay in one place with anybody very long because she has had problems dealing with it. Yuba County Victim Witness offered us help. We applied. Clint Curry's office told them we weren't victims. We got no counseling, no financial help, nothing. This is not the day and time, the America or the California I grew up in. I don't understand. I thought I had enough hardship in my life, not having such a good life growing up, watching my daughter slowly die for 8 years, and then to watch my husband be brutally beaten and murdered, and nobody do anything about it. And I've kept silent, except for to go around and hang a few banners and posters that say things like "Justice for Brad Young." I went to Lake County approximately a year ago, and I hung banners there. His mom's on Facebook saying, "Tell those bees I got all their banners in my closet. I ought to cross out that death certificate and say that it was self-defense." You cannot. How do you argue with a death certificate that was done by an independent county? My husband's autopsy was not performed in Yuba County. It was performed in Placer County by an outside agency that determined it was homicide. I don't understand. I don't understand. We sued the doctor, and this is a little bit of the backstory. We sued the doctor who made the mistake in my daughter's case. He was found guilty of guilty of contributing to her brain damage, but not negligent. So we didn't really win anything in court, even though all we were asking for was for him to pay her medical expenses. We asked for nothing for ourselves. We didn't sue when she died for wrongful death, which we would have won. Me and my husband weren't those kind of people. We stand on principles and what is right and what is wrong. And what's happened to my husband is wrong. I've tried the state's attorney. I've sent off to the Department of Justice. I've sent off even to my local county supervisor for where I live, my district supervisor. His grandfather was our neighbor at one point. He won't even help me. Nobody will go against Clint Curry and the Yuba County District Attorney's Office.
It's hard to believe that they're that powerful.
We're in a very small town. And that's not the only case that's not been handled correctly in this area. It's kind of par for the course. My husband always said, though, after what happened to our oldest daughter, because we did everything we were supposed to, we got a lawyer, we went to court, that if anybody ever messed with his children, he would die for them. And he died for our youngest daughter because we still don't know what that kid's intentions were. Why was he trying to break into the very window that my husband and my daughter found open earlier in the day? Was he going to lay in wait and murder my daughter?
Probably.
We don't know. What we do know is what we found out is he's a psychopath.
I don't think that window was open by mistake.
Neither do we.
He probably left that window open for his opportunity.
That's exactly what we think too, because my daughter was raised in a house where you close and lock all the windows and doors.
I can't imagine. I'm so sorry, Andrea.
So for the last 853 days, my life has been like a Lifetime movie. Well, actually, my whole life has been like a Lifetime movie. And I get up every day and I try to go forward. Some days it's pretty hard, but I'm still going forward. And I will no longer be silent. I walk the streets of my town when I do go out with shirts that say, my death certificate says homicide, but the Yuba County District Attorney refuses to pursue charges. This is one of many things. I have shirts that say justice for Brad Young. We painted rocks because there's a rock group around here and hid them around town. We've had a lot of people respond to us and say justice needs to be served for my husband, but we can't get the district attorney to do his job. We can't make him, which is the same thing Yuba County sheriffs have told me and the Marysville police. The detective who investigated my husband's case, his recommendation to the district attorney was to go forth with the charges he already had and to amend it and add voluntary manslaughter. But you can't make a district attorney do that.
No, it's up to them.
If there's a way, I haven't found it.
When's the guy up for re-election?
I'm not sure if he's going up for re-election this time or not, because he runs unopposed. Nobody will run against him. In the kind of town we live in, it's a small town. A hotel just recently burnt down. It's the third incident that's happened in the last few years under suspicious circumstances. And all three buildings were very old buildings that the city and or county wanted to get rid of. And all three of them, the same fire chief was in charge of, and they all burnt down and was not able to be put out. As I speak to you right now, since March, you haven't been able to go down Highway 70 through Marysville because the building's still standing. The property owner won't do nothing with it, neither will the city. So around here, it's pretty much who you know, who you are, how much money you have, what you can get done.
So sorry for your story.
There's plenty of the stories here in this town. My life has been like a Lifetime movie. But there's plenty of other stories here in this town that need somebody to really look into this. This is my goal in coming on here. My goal in coming on here is to bring awareness to what happened to my husband, to see if maybe somebody can help us, or if somebody can help us change what is happening in the small town we live in.
Well, we're giving you the platform, and we hope something can happen.
I thank you very much, and I pray every day for some kind of justice for my husband.
I'll pray for you too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm speechless. I can't imagine the heartbreak. I can't imagine the disappointment in the society. I'm speechless. I'm stunned. I've never heard a story that awful. I've heard some pretty bad stories. That's... damn.
That's why I said some days it's bittersweet when I drive by the park. The best part of my life was with my husband, and it's gone. All because he wanted to protect his daughter.
I'm so sorry. I'm sure every day you think of things you could have done differently.
Yes. Why I said the biggest regrets of my life was taking my daughter to the hospital that I took her to and leaving my house on June 5th, 2022. My husband was ready to go to bed, and I wish we would have just went to bed. But being the dad he is, he wasn't going to let anybody try to go hurt his daughter.
Call your daughter and tell her to come home.
So,
yeah. I'm so sorry.
thank you.
I can't imagine. I just don't even know what to say. But we're gonna get this story out there, and hopefully some things will change for you. You're welcome. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
sharing your story. I hope, if nothing else, maybe it saves somebody else's life.
Yeah, maybe people will think twice if they know who Tyler Berry is about being around him or leaving children with him or women with him or anything.
Yeah. Okay. I'm stunned. I can't even keep. That's all I can think of is holy crap. I can't even think of something to say, and I'm usually pretty chatty. Damn. I can't imagine.
It's been a nightmare. I thought losing my daughter was a nightmare, but I had 8 years to prepare for it. I kind of always knew she was going to die before me. But watching your husband be beat and then seeing him gargle blood and then the accident, and the biggest part that frustrates me is the kid says my husband died in the accident, and that was ruled not to be.
He had the accident because he was dying, not the other way around.
He had the accident because he had already died. The brain aneurysm had already went. They ruled that my husband was dead before we crashed the truck. We crashed the truck because my husband was dead. I didn't know my husband was hurt that seriously, and I also didn't drive at the time because I suffered for many years from severe panic attacks, so I gave my driver's license back. But if I would have known my husband was that badly hurt, I would have drove. I did know how to drive. I just didn't do it because I didn't like to, because, again, my morals and the fiber of who I am. When I developed panic attacks, I told my husband I cannot drive and maybe have a panic attack and run somebody over and live with myself. My family and the murderer's family, and he is a murderer, and I hope he sees this, and I hope he does what they said they're going to do. Please take me to civil court and try to sue me. It will save me a lot of money and time of trying to figure out how to hunt you down and sue you. Please sue me, Tyler Berry. You are a murderer. His family is different than mine. They're cut differently than we are.
There's some real awful people out there.
There are.
I'm sorry all this happened to you.
Yeah.
I hope you find justice.
Yeah, well, they drive by my house. His sister drives by my house and screams things at me on the anniversary of my husband dying. That's one of the reasons my house has had to be put on watch by the local sheriff's department so many times, because the local sheriff's department agrees that he should have went to prison. And this is why I sleep with 2 loaded guns, and when I do leave my house, I leave my house with lots of weapons with me. Because if one don't work, the next one hopefully will. So. And this is why I don't discuss where I go, what I do, and what any of my hobbies are. I would rather not run into any of them in public.
I live in a state where it's constitutional carry, so I don't have to have a permit or anything to carry a gun open or concealed, and I just don't leave my house without one.
Yeah, it's totally not safe if you do.
Yeah, and you know, it just...
The world is totally different.
You're
probably around the same age as me, and the world is totally different than what it was.
Yeah, I'm 50, and in the 90s, if you had a problem with someone, you got your knuckles up and you handled it, and you shook hands and you acted like a man.
And my husband was never trying to fight him that night. The video will show my husband never made a fist during any of this. The only thing you ever see in the video is my husband's hands like this. So there was no fight. There was a one-sided fight. My husband pushed him because he wasn't listening, and my husband was getting agitated that he wouldn't get away from the window. So my husband pushed him. You know, I do still believe that he tricked my husband, that there was something happened over here with Tyler's left hand right before my husband shoved him. Do I believe my husband should have shoved him? No, I don't believe my husband should have shoved him.
It's a misdirection.
Yes, that's exactly what I believe happened. So, she knew what buttons to push to get my husband to do something so he could swing on my husband. Why would you put a weapon in your hand before a person ever gets out of a vehicle if it's self-defense?
I believe legally they call that malice of forethought.
I believe so too. In the video, if you watch the whole video, not just what the DA released, as my husband's checking that window, there's a vehicle that matches the description that he pulled up in, sitting across the street watching me and my husband, that we didn't notice. There's a lot of layers to this story. I don't know how it is that his family was able to view and see my dash camera video before I was. I freely let the police take it the night my husband died. For 3 months, they told me, well, for 3 months, well, there was no charges. No judge ever heard anything about my husband. For 3 months, I was told the video wasn't usable, that there was nothing there because of the angle of the truck. Officer Rosenfeld called me herself and said that the video wasn't usable. And then, right before we're going to go to court, we all had our interviews with the new district attorney, the one that worked our case. His name was John Bassick. He was somebody who nobody had ever heard of in this town. He came out of retirement from Alaska. My husband's case was his first case, I do believe, because he was introduced as a district attorney here for Yuba County after he sat on my husband's case. He knew I pleaded with him never, if he was going to show that video in open court, not to, because at some point they did say that they were going to watch the video, and I said, if you're going to use if any of that video is usable and you play it in court, please let me know so my children can leave the courtroom. He called me in and told me to bring my children in. Played the video without any warning, so my children had to watch their father be beat. And then
he was trying to elicit a response to create sympathy.
And then on a weekend, he released it on Facebook without anybody's knowledge. My neighbor came to my house and said, Nikki, did you give them permission to put the video on Facebook? And I said, what are you talking about? The only reason Clint Curry took it down is because I told him the only thing I have in this world is a small little house that I don't own, but I will remortgage it if I have to sue Yuba County if you don't take it down. He not only took it down, he took the statement down that they made, because we thought his investigator, James Perrin, who claims that he did not see the kid use a weapon in the video. James Perrin claimed in the meeting that they took with us over a year after all of this happened, he claimed he was going to investigate it. So we thought by them not just taking the video down, because one of my daughters made the comment to them, you could have just made your statement. You didn't have to share my mom's video. You don't own it. And it told them point blank, if there is no crime committed against my husband, that video is not evidence against anything. You don't own it. You can't use it. You can't share it like that. Please take it down. On multiple occasions, they took their statement down. So we thought they were going to reinvestigate into that. Actually, James Perrin told us he was going to look into the part of the law that I quoted about stand your ground and not being able to use a weapon the way he did. You can use a gun, you can use a knife, but you cannot load your hand. The kid loaded his hand before my husband ever got to him, before my husband ever got fully out of his truck. So now I'll name their names and I'll go very public with it, and I'll go as public. Anybody else who watches this, who wants me to go public, who wants my information, who wants the records, who wants the documentation that I have that proves it, get a hold of me. Get a hold of Craig, get a hold of his wife. I'll give you the information.
Well, hopefully someone will get someone's attention and we can get something done.
Any help that you can give me, I would very much appreciate.
I don't know what we can do, but we'll try.
Well, just getting the story out there. I've been quiet for too long. Just putting up banners and flags and stuff, and people contacting me or my daughters and saying what happened is wrong. That's not getting us anywhere. Even standing in front of the DA's office holding my flag, my husband's flag up that says Justice for Brad with tape on my mouth with my head bowed as they walk by, has not got a reaction out of it.
It's so much to take in.
It is. It's a lot. It's my life.
Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you.
Have a good night. I hope
You
you
too.
find some peace.
Me too.